And we're all stuck in there.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the lecture for ancient and medieval history for Wednesday, February. February 3rd. February, 2021. Please make sure that you have your note packets out. Last time and the time before, we looked at uh, varying levels of quality recreations of Roman combat. What you should get is the central message that the Romans turned combat as much as possible into a controlled, planned affair. Open notes. Make sure that you have uh, control over your men. You teach them how to move. You create weapons and armor that are designed to work in concert. You turn it into a maneuver, a drill, a dance, as much as possible. With that discipline and control, and a willingness to work harder than their enemies at grooming the battlefield, at controlling that which was controllable, the Romans conquered the known world. They redesign under Gaius Marius their legions. They are more flexible, more mobile, more maneuverable than the Greek phalanx, which is big and clumsy by comparison. Their use of javelins and short swords, large shields, and body armor, at first chainmail, then segmented armor, is second to none. And their willingness to train. This was said of the Emperor Tiberius when he was a general. His drills were bloodless battles, his battles were bloody drills. And what that means is he trained his men so hard that when battle actually came, they were psychologically, physically prepared to go through the maneuvers. And battle is unlike anything else in human life. If you've never been in a serious fight, you don't know what it's like. If you have, you know a little of what it's like. But if it wasn't a fight to the death, you don't know what it's like. If it wasn't a fight to the death among thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of people, you don't know what it's like. Battle is like nothing else. Because in battle, they're going to kill you if they can. You're going to kill them if you can. And this wakes up the subconscious parts of the mind. You pay attention because the alternative is that you die. On the other hand, you can get so overwhelmed by the stimuli of battle that you go, we call it today post-traumatic stress disorder, and that term is overused today. It started out being called battle fatigue in World War II and shell shock in World War I. And shell shock comes closer to it. The human mind and the human nervous system was never designed to stand up to 2 weeks of solid, where each time could lead to you being crushed or killed or buried alive. And sometimes that went on for 2 weeks. So people snapped. And there are old films of shell shock victims, wonderful young men who cluck like chickens or bang their heads hard as they can into cement walls, try chewing their own fingers off. It's nasty stuff. That's real post-traumatic stress disorder. So the Romans, by turning it into an engineering problem, create a psychological barrier through which their men can function. They train their men so well that they can function without their mind can be over here, but their body knows what to do. Our military, all Western militaries, particularly us, the British and the Germans, are based on Roman approaches to war. And it is this approach that has won European civilization in the world. 106 years ago, there were only 5 countries on Earth that weren't directly ruled by Europeans or former Europeans like us. Um, it, even those 5 were still influenced. So this approach to warfare is extremely effective. And so long as the Romans maintain this standard, nobody beats them. They may lose in battle, they don't lose wars very often. Um, And this goes on hundreds of years. To keep your superiority over all your enemies for several hundred years, they worked at it. And you saw the battles at sea, which were similar, but not as well controlled as the battles on land. All of this is important, and it was worth showing you those extensive clips, I think, because A, it was fun, B, you get a chance to see how different filmmakers approach similar material, but C, we're dealing with warfare. Where we got to on our elections, no, not elections, our lectures, was to the first triumvirate, an alliance of Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, or Pompey the Great, of Marcus Licinius Crassus, and of Julius Caesar. And we got to Crassus's defeat of the Spartacus slave revolt. So, Pompey was the great golden boy of Rome, who drove away the pirates and who conquered the Greek world, turning the Holy of Holies in the Jewish temple into a stable for his horse, to demonstrate that Mars was superior to Yahweh. Crassus stayed in Rome during this period. Pompey stayed in Rome during this period. Crassus made his money with the fire brigades, a protection racket whereby people in Rome who owned land, businesses, apartment buildings were encouraged to pay the fire brigade. So the fire brigade would protect them from the fire brigade. It's a mafia tactic. It's called extortion. It is a felony, which means it's a serious crime. Crassus made his money that way and got some glory defeating the slaves of Spartacus's army. But defeating slaves is not going to win you the kind of accolades that Pompey won by conquering the rest of the Mediterranean littoral, the Mediterranean coast. And it's not going to win him the kind of glory that Caesar is winning in Gaul. So Crassus, wanting glory, is going to build up an army corps of 3 legions and head east. His goal is the only civilized country on Rome's borders, the Parthian Empire. The Parthian Empire is the successor state to Persia. Parthians are ruled by a horse tribe from what is now the Kurdistan region of northern and western Iran. Parthians have their capital at Ctesiphon, near what is now Baghdad in central Iraq, and they rule an empire that stretches to the borders of the Indus Valley region and to the desert between modern Iraq and modern Syria. The Romans rule the Syrian side, the Parthians the Iraqi side. So, Crassus and his legions gather in Syria and move across the desert towards Ctesiphon. The goal is to have the Romans fight the fight the Parthians out of the way, and for the Romans to take control of Ctesiphon, and at the very least break the power of the Parthians to threaten Rome, and possibly even conquer this region, which we now call Iraq, for Rome, and drive the successors of Persia back behind these Zagros mountains. That's the plan. So, Crassus and his legions are marching into the desert. They are wearing metal armor. They are primarily foot soldiers. They are farther and farther away from their base of operations. Their scouts begin to disappear, sent out, not to come back. Then they notice at the extreme edge of their vision dust clouds all around them. These dust clouds are formed as they get closer by Parthian horse soldier units. The Roman cavalry is drawn out, cut off, and destroyed. Now, Crassus's forces are exclusively foot soldiers in the desert wearing metal armor. The Parthians then begin what is called the Parthian tactic, which is a way of fighting the Romans that they will use to great effect here and later. The Romans, let's say, is represented, the front ranks of the Romans, by these 3 tables. Well, what I will do is, as a Parthian unit of horsemen, I will ride up within range and taunt the Romans until they start throwing javelins at me. A few of my men will be killed, but not too many. And until, and maybe I will start pouring arrows into them. So, horse soldiers shooting arrows from light short bows, you can still wound or kill somebody. So the Romans can try their testudo, but in the end, my goal is to provoke a temper reaction, make them angry. And sooner or later, I'm going to do it. Then the Romans will engage in one of the funniest and most tragic of maneuvers. As foot soldiers, they will try to chase my horse soldiers while wearing metal body armor in the desert. My horse soldiers will do what is called the Parthian shot. The Parthian shot involves Parthians basically reversing on their saddles. I'm not flexible enough to do that these days. And basically, their horse is riding this way, but they're facing backward, and they continue to shoot and shoot and shoot at the Romans. They are pulling away as fast as the Romans are advancing. If the Romans speed up, they speed up. If the Romans slow down, they slow down. Until the Romans are so exhausted that they stop. Then the Parthians go away, another unit comes up and does the same thing. For 3 days and 3 nights, the Romans are withered and weakened and killed in this way, until finally the Roman spirit of Crassus's legions breaks and the Parthians wipe them out to the last man. The 3 imperial legionary eagles that are considered demigods of the legion are captured by the Parthian king and are eventually negotiated about 80 years later by Augustus to return to Rome. So Crassus dies in the desert at the Battle of Carrhae, not Cannae. Cannae is the battle with Hannibal in Italy that defeats the Romans. Carrhae is the battle where the Parthians defeat Crassus's Roman army. So now there are only 2 triumvirs left, and we're about to talk about the most dynamic of them, Gaius Julius Caesar. Gaius Julius Caesar claims his descent from the goddess Venus, which is the Roman Aphrodite. The Julii, which is his clan, claim descent from Venus, and they traditionally are incredibly charming people. These are the kind of people that can seduce any member of the opposite sex anytime they want. They are people who can make you buy things that you otherwise would never buy. They're people who can convince you. They're just incredibly charming. And if a Julii, a member of the Julian clan, turns on the charm, you'd better watch out, because it's very hard to resist them. There is a reason why the clan claims personal descent from the goddess Venus. So, okay. Julius Caesar has a distant relationship to the Gracchi. The Julii are one of the great patrician families of Rome, but because of their connection to the Gracchi, Caesar grows up with populare leanings, not optimate leanings. Now, as a young man, he is given the present of a grand tour. This is something that wealthy people still do. At some point during your youth, these days, usually either between high school and college or right after graduating from your undergraduate program in college, at some point when you're a young adult, you go on the grand tour and you tour the great cities of Europe. This is something aristocrats still do. And if you have the money, it's a good way to spend a year. You go around, you travel broadens the mind, you learn about the world, you practice your various language skills, you see places where events really happen, you breathe the air, you talk to the people, you eat the food, you learn about the world. And to the extent you have wanderlust, your wanderlust is satiated by this grand tour. Well, Caesar's going to do a version of that. He's going to tour the East. But off the coast of Cilicia, which is today sort of southern Turkey, Caesar's ship gets captured by Cilician pirates. They kill the crew. They kill his servants. They kill the captain and the officers. The only survivor, and this is very much on purpose, is the young Roman aristocrat Gaius Julius Caesar. He's in his mid-teens, about your age, maybe a little younger. And they basically keep him under decks, below decks. They blindfold him, and they make their way to their secret pirate base, somewhere on the coast or off the coast of Cilicia. When they get into the secret base, Caesar is brought up, and he's brought before the pirate leader, who is the commander of the small pirate fleet. And Caesar is told, "You are our hostage. You are still alive because you come from a wealthy family. It's obvious the way you carry yourself, the clothing you wear, what all the servants and crew said. You are one of the great families from one of the great families of Rome. And we intend to squeeze that family and get a massive ransom. If you obey us, if you don't try to escape, if you don't make trouble for us, you can live a pretty comfortable life with us until they pay us." And of course they're going to pay us. Don't worry about it. Your family loves you. They'll pay your ransom. It's going to be okay. Of course, if you make trouble for us, we'll mail parts of you back home. So don't. And Caesar agreed. But Caesar is a Julii. He starts charming the pirates. He starts becoming their buddy. He starts offering them advice. The illiterate pirates he'll read a letter to. He'll write letters for. Pirates who are having relationship problems, he'll offer advice because he's well educated and a very thoughtful guy, very smart guy at a young age, very wise guy. Yeah, he's a wise guy. Caesar becomes the mascot of the men and the officers of this pirate camp. Even the king of the pirates, the chief of this pirate clan, comes to view Caesar sort of as a nephew. Caesar tells jokes, people laugh. Caesar's invited to their drinking parties. He's basically treated like one of them fairly quickly. And then the money arrives. The family found the money, and they paid off the pirates. And so Caesar is, in fact, in a good shape. He's going to go home. But because the pirates like him so much, they're going to have a massive party and feast for him. So that night, they get together and they're drinking and they're singing and they're gambling and they're telling jokes. And then they say, "Speech, speech, speech." And little, young, probably less than 15-year-old Caesar, 14 I think he is, it's up in front of them and says, "Men, it's been fun. I've learned all sorts of things about you, and it's been a blast. You're a great bunch of guys. Of course, you got to understand, as soon as I can, I'm coming back here, and I have to kill every single one of you, because you took me prisoner. It just has to happen." And there's this moment of silence. They can't believe what he just said. And then they laugh. "Oh, that's funny. Oh, their prisoner's threatening to kill them all. He's like a cute little mascot. The Dickens, you say. Oh, Caesar says the most amazing things." So he leaves. He gets back to a place where his family has influence, and he makes a deal and gets control of a small fleet, and goes out and hunts that pirate clan and all the other pirate clans related to them down to the last ship, to the last man. This embarrassed Pompey. This is one of the things that caused Pompey, when he got older, to want to drive the pirates off the sea. Finally, the heart of the pirate crew that captured him and held him hostage is taken prisoner by Caesar. And Caesar has them crucified, which is not a nice way to die. It's the worst way the Romans could think of to kill someone. Because Jesus, as much as he suffered, and you'll learn more about this, Jesus died very, very quickly. Usually a person who's crucified takes 3-4 days to die, and it's suffering, it's miserable. Worst 3 or 4 days of your life, and then you die. And you're dying by inches slowly. Your eyes get eaten out by birds, and it's just bad. Your sockets come apart on your shoulder. It's a nasty way to die. So the guy's up there on the cross, and Caesar says, basically, "I told you I would. I did. That's Caesar. Caesar is the kind of guy that will tell his captors he's going to have to hunt them down and kill all of them. And they laugh, and then he does it. Don't mess with Caesar. Now, he was born with difficulties, so he had to be actually cut out of his mother. She didn't die, I don't think. It was C-section. So if you've ever heard of somebody born cesarean sections, because Julius Caesar was born that way. Anyway, I think Caesar had epileptic seizures. Another thing about it.
Oh yeah, I think he did.
Yeah. So a lot of people in history too. Kublai Khan, his grandson, who Marco Polo was, he had epileptic seizures also. Okay, so Caesar becomes the junior partner in the first triumvirate. Crassus is older than him. Pompey is much older than him. And Caesar comes on board to cement the populares. Pompey's sort of an optimate. Crassus is out for himself. And Caesar's, it works. But when Caesar is old enough, he takes as his task doing something that no Roman had ever done before. So far, the Romans had captured the coastal area of southern Gaul. What Caesar's going to do is he's going to march north and take the rest of Gaul, and maybe even Germania and Britannia to boot. So Caesar organizes a few armies, an army corps, several legions. And he marches out of the Mediterranean world, out of the Roman world, into what we would call central France. Now, Gaul is not empty. Gaul is teeming with Celts. Remember the guy with the druid and the Orokai, which means I curse you, which I don't do. I'm not cursing you yet. I don't know why saying no in Russian is going to cancel the Celtic curse, but I hope it does. They, with their chariots and their tartan and plaid trousers, and the men with their big mustaches and spiky hair, and the women with their torques and their property rights, they fight Caesar hard. They're druids, they're nature priest leaders, organize real good defenses. And it's going to take Caesar about 10 years to conquer Gaul. Caesar basically marches around and around and around, laying siege to cities at places like Bibrocht and Alesia. Caesar meets massive Celtic forces and breaks them. At Bibrocht, there's the city walls. Caesar builds a set of walls around the city walls, a bit like Syracuse. And then the Celts come and try to attack him from other tribes. So Caesar builds a set of walls outside of his own walls. So Caesar's men are like in a donut shape between walls that face out and walls that face in. And then he defeats them at Bibrocht, takes the city, and destroys the tribes. Now, Pompey's okay with this because Caesar is too darn charismatic for his own good. Charisma means likability. It's that quality the gods give somebody who's naturally charming. Caesar has it in spades, and he's brilliant and he's ruthless. Caesar's almost this perfect Roman. Pompey's happy because Caesar's out of town. Caesar's busy winning glory in the woods of Gaul. That leaves Pompey to rule Rome. Except, Caesar's not stupid. He does not want himself to be forgotten by his clients in the Roman proletariat and by his friends in the Roman aristocracy, the patricians and even the plebeians. So Caesar begins writing a series of articles home on a regular basis about his experiences in Gaul. Now, his clients read them in the streets. They read them in the forums. They read them in the bars while men are drinking their wine and eating their cheese. The aristocrats have their slaves read these stories. And Caesar writes them like adventure stories. Soon, the people of Rome, even people that weren't previously connected to Caesar, get interested. It's like a soap opera combined with a war drama. What's Caesar going to do this week? What are these officers going to do? They have all their dramas. They've got all their personalities. Oh, the Celts, they're so fierce. What's going to happen now? What's going to happen next? In doing this, in writing his commentaries on The Gallic Wars. Julius Caesar keeps himself forefront in the minds and hearts of Romans. In fact, he wins over many Romans who had otherwise been neutral towards him because they get involved in his story. Now that's brilliant. And he's a good writer. And if you ever take an advanced math class, chances are you will read at least excerpts from, maybe the entire commentaries on the Gallic Wars, and you can see for yourself. Ask Mr. Williams about them. He'll tell you. But Caesar's purpose isn't just to write a bunch of reports to the Senate. It's to keep himself a celebrity, a figure that is worth knowing and imagining about and hoping for and rooting for in the minds of everyday Romans. And it works. Now, Caesar succeeds in conquering the territory west of the Rhine River, which is today not only France, but Belgium and parts of Holland. So, here's the Rhine River. And Caesar takes all of this territory west of the Rhine River. Roman territory had been down here, so Caesar takes all of this. It's a huge area. And it's also the first time that Romans leave the climate and vegetation and the zone of the Mediterranean Sea. They're now in northern European forests, which are chilly and misty and damp. Well, now that he has Gaul, he's got a problem. Because there are raiders coming from across the Rhine attacking Roman Gaul, and there are raiders coming across the English Channel raiding Gaul, Roman Gaul. The first group he deals with are the Germans, who are from east of the Rhine. The Germans are not Celts. They're bigger than the Celts, they're more muscular than the Celts. The Celts tend to be red-haired, the Germans tend to be blonde. The Celts tend to be green-eyed, the Germans tend to be blue-eyed. Celts tend to have freckles, the Germans tend to have fair complexions. The Celts are passionate and violent. The Germans think of fighting as fun. Their culture says that war is the highest destiny of man. So the Germans are more dangerous than the Celts, than the Gauls. But Caesar wants to make an impression. So Caesar crosses the Rhine into Germania and kicks butt for month after month after month, challenging the German tribes and German chieftains to come fight him. And he crushes them. Wherever he goes, he wins. This is not easy. Caesar's a very good general. And what it produces is enough fear in the Germans that when Caesar crosses the Rhine back, he doesn't try to hold Germania. He just pacifies it a bit by making it clear that if you come across this river and mess with us, we're coming across the river. We're gonna rape your women. We're gonna enslave your children. We're gonna kill your men. We're gonna burn your villages. And if you make us come back again, we'll do it to your kids and your grandkids ad infinitum because you do not bleed with Rome. And that message sticks. And for a while, the Germans are not a big problem, which is an amazing thing, getting the Germans not to be a big problem. Then, discerning that it is the Druids that escaped from Gaul that are making trouble in Britain and causing all these sea raids across the English Channel, Caesar, with I think 3 legions, crosses the English Channel and does the same thing in Britannia. He's not trying to hold Britannia. He's trying to pacify it by letting the Celts in Britannia, the Britons, know the same thing he let the Germans know. If you cross the water into our lands and mess with our people, we will come here and we will do to your people far worse than you've ever even thought of doing to us. Don't bleed with Rome. And the raids from Britain stopped for a very good long time. So Caesar conquers Gaul and for a while pacifies both Germania and Britannia. That's pretty darn glorious. And by this point, he's ready to come back to Rome. At this point, Crassus is dead, and Pompey is in Rome, and Pompey's afraid, because Pompey is now an old man, older anyway than Caesar by about a generation. And he appreciates. Caesar has the most battle-tested army in the Roman world. These guys have been fighting for Caesar straight for 10 solid years. These men are old. They are like saddlebags with eyes. They are tough. They are used to hardship. They're used to inflicting and receiving pain. They are tougher than anyone you could possibly meet. And he's got legions of these guys. And these guys know that Caesar has not only brought them incredible riches and incredible glory, but he is probably the best general in Rome. And Caesar has a reputation for caring for the common person. Pompey knows all of this. So he gets the Senate to make a law that's supposed to prevent another Marius or Sulla from taking over. Because Marius had an army in Rome, Sulla brought an army to Rome. So his notion is that we can have army control. It's like some people believe in gun control. We'll make a law, and everyone will obey it. And without guns legally in anyone's hands, the world would be so much safer. If gun control worked, the Bronx, where I'm from, Chicago, Los Angeles, and every other city that has draconian gun laws would be the safest places in the country. But they're not. The safest places in the country happen to be places where it's much easier for everyday Americans to carry weapons. Go figure. Laws don't always work. Pompey sets up a law that says you cannot bring your army south of the Rubicon River. If you bring your army into Italy, and the Rubicon River is south of the Po River, it's about here. If you bring your army south of that line, south of the Po Valley, into Italy proper, you will be deemed a traitor by the Senate and damned as a rebel by the people of Rome. And as an outcast outlaw, Rome and all of its empire will turn against you and will fight you. Pompey thinks that that's going to deter Caesar. And it's serious. So Caesar, once he secures and leaves garrisons, which are troops to hold the land he's won, takes the heart of his army, the striking power of his army, south, across the Alps, or around the Alps actually, towards the Rubicon River. Everyone's waiting to see what Caesar will do. If Caesar obeys the law, he will disband his army north of the Rubicon. His men will all go home, not as a unit, but as a group of civilians. Caesar will come home as a civilian, and he will be an obedient Roman, obedient to the laws of Rome. But he will also likely be killed when he arrives by an accidental murder that just happens to kill this guy. Because Pompey controls Rome. He controls the legal side of Rome and the illegal side of Rome. And Caesar is rightly afraid that if he obeys the law, he's going to be assassinated. Because Pompey doesn't want to share power anymore. He's gotten used to running Rome all by his lonesome. Then again, if Caesar crosses the Rubicon, the law says the entire Roman world should turn against him. What to do? So Caesar camps his army, and he spends the night alone in his tent, thinking. He comes out the next morning. His men are expectant. Are we going to be dismissed, or are we going to head home together? Caesar says, "The die is cast." It's a reference to a dice. Cross the river. His army crosses the Rubicon. It is now conquer or die. Conquer or die. It's the same choice that Hernando Cortez gives his conquistadors when they land on the shores of the Aztec Empire and burns their ships. Now you've got no choice, conquistadors. You will either conquer or you'll die. So will I. Well, Caesar says, we will conquer or we will die. The die is cast, different dies. So, Caesar is marching south with his army towards Rome. Pompey tries marshaling an army, and it doesn't work. Lots of people in Rome are loyal to Caesar. In fact, Caesar's factors and agents are in the streets singing a new song. It's a little blue, a little off color, so just bear that in mind. Homeward comes the bald whoremonger. Romans, lock your wives away. And the meaning of the song should be clear. Homeward comes the bald whoremonger. Romans, lock your wives away. In other words, Caesar's coming. He's tough. If you mess with him, your females are going to be raped by his men. Don't mess with Caesar. He conquered the Gauls. He intimidated the Germans and Britons. He's coming. Pompey has such trouble getting anyone to fight for him other than the elite, old patrician aristocrat optimates that he actually pulls out of Rome. Pompey's plan is to leave Rome, go south into Italy, get more men, and then cross over into Greece, where more of his clients are, and to fight in Greece. When you have to give up the capital city at the beginning of the Civil War, it's a bad sign. So, Pompey leaves Rome, Caesar enters Rome, and the people of Rome, yay, because Caesar's got an army. Sort of like Gordium with Alexander the Great. But this is Caesar's home. Caesar has genuine support here. His army gets bigger. And his men don't rape anyone. His men don't assault anyone. They treat the Romans not like a conquered people. They treat the Romans like their friends and family and relatives, which is who they are. Caesar actually pays out money to the proletariat of Rome in order to encourage them to lead better lives. He's really buying their support. And it works. So Caesar, when he takes Rome, does not mess it up by acting the conqueror. Caesar instead acts humble, respectful of the Senate, apologetic about having to break the law, but he says, look, what was I going to do? Was I going to obey your law and then allow myself to get murdered by Pompey in the street? No, nobody would do that. You wouldn't do that. That's just stupid. And the Senate, surrounded by Caesar's army, of course, says, yeah, you're right. Yeah, sure. Anyone who's going to fight Caesar has already removed to Greece. So Caesar leaves Rome and goes after Pompey. At the Battle of Pharsalus, Caesar's men encounters Pompey. Pompey's men they're like the opposite of Caesar's. Caesar's men are like little nasty old men who are really good at battle. Pompey's men are like male models. They're like the Derek Zoolander of Roman society. They are the sons of the richest and most powerful families. So Caesar says to his men before the battle, you want to win? You want to win quickly and easily? Aim for the face of these pretty boys. Aim for their face. They'll get so horrified that they might get a scar that they'll leave themselves open and you can gut them. Aim for the face of the pretty boys. And it works. At the Battle of Pharsalus, Caesar's nasty little old men destroy the pretty boys of Pompey's army. Pompey flees to Egypt. Meanwhile, the descendants of Scipio and of Cato, Scipio the Younger and Porcius Cato the Younger, they escaped to the new city of Carthage in the Roman province of Africa. What to do? Well, as Caesar's getting ready to go after Pompey in Egypt, he sends a message to Cato and Scipio in Africa saying, look, I understand why you're fighting for the Republic. I love the Republic. I'm not fighting to be your king. I know you think I am, but I'm really not. I want to make Rome great again. So, join me. I forgive your fighting with me. I won't hold it against you. I've forgiven a lot of people who joined me after fighting me. Brutus was with Pompey, and now he's with me, and I treat Brutus like a son. Come on, Cato. Come on, Scipio. Take your old family names and join me and help restore the Republic. Scipio and Cato both choose to commit suicide rather than join Caesar. Cato the Younger famously says, I'd rather die free than live like a slave, and opens his veins. To this day, Cato the Younger is an example to anyone who loves liberty more than they love life. He was an example to a lot of early Americans who were fighting the British. When Patrick Henry says, give me liberty or give me death, he's basically quoting, paraphrasing, should I say, the words of Marcus Porcius Cato, faced by Caesar's encouragement to join him. Caesar says, fine, you're dead. I don't care. Enjoy your rectitude and wherever you are. And he goes to Egypt. Now, Egypt is ruled by the Ptolemies, the descendants of a general of Alexander the Great. That's Ptolemy with a P. Ptolemy, Ptolemy. And the Ptolemies who rule Egypt are this inbred upper-class Greek family that treat the Egyptians like slaves, but they also encourage them in saying, Egypt's a unique place. It's like nowhere else on earth. Look at the pyramids. Look at the great ruins we have, the great past we have. So even though they're a Greek family, they identify themselves with Egypt. The ruler is a Ptolemy. I forget the number. They all call themselves Ptolemy if they're guys. And they call themselves Cleopatra if they're female. Well, this Ptolemy is a 13 or a 14-year-old kid. And he is surrounded by advisors who guide him. Caesar arrives. He expects to find Pompey. What Caesar wants to do is reconcile. He doesn't want to have to kill Pompey. He's beaten his army. Caesar wants to offer Pompey clemency. He wants to show himself as a man who's above partisanship. He wants to show himself as somebody who will rule Rome for everyone. The Optimates, the Populares, the people who fought for Pompey, the people who fought for him. He wants to unify Rome, bring it together. And he wants to demonstrate this desire to unify Rome by pardoning and making his partner, his old partner from the triumvirate, his greatest enemy, Pompey the Great. When he arrives, the little pipsqueak of an Egyptian king presents Caesar with a platter, a covered platter. His slaves bring it up, and one of Caesar's men lifts the platter, and it's the head of Pompey. The Egyptian king had promised Pompey sanctuary and then assassinated and beheaded him. And he thought that Caesar would appreciate the head of Pompey. Caesar loses it and basically says, you little twit, you had the nerve to take a man in, offer him hospitality, and then hack his head off? Not just a man, but a god among men, a great Roman like Pompey the Great. So now Caesar is in high dudgeon. He is furious. How dare a Greek and an Egyptian, weak, feminine races, how dare you murder through deception a great manly Roman like Pompey? That insults him, it insults me, and it insults Rome. And you know what happens when you insult Rome? Everyone else who's insulted Rome is under Roman rule. And he storms off. And the Pompey kid is, well, what the heck? You said he'd like it. And the advisors are going, I don't know. That night, Caesar learns that I always get these two. Ptolemy, the king is Ptolemy. The guy who's dead is Pompey. Caesar learns that Ptolemy is in trouble because Ptolemy has an older sister. Ptolemy is 13 or 14 years old. His sister is 16 or 17 years old. Her name is Cleopatra. She's in hiding. Cleopatra seems to be smarter than Ptolemy and wiser than Ptolemy, and she's older than Ptolemy and has a lot of support Ptolemy doesn't have. Well, Caesar hears about it. He's got a lot to think about, so he's staying up and he's sort of pacing and thinking and brooding. Pacing and thinking and brooding, and there's a knock on his door. And it's a soldier saying, we got a message here. We got a gift from Queen Cleopatra. Caesar says, fine, bring it in. What is it? It's a rug. So they unroll the rug, and out pops Cleopatra in perfect paint-me-like-your-French-girls pose. Okay? And understand about Cleopatra. She had a nose. Okay? I mean a big nose. Look at the coins. She was not physically the most model-like beauty in the world. But it's not physical beauty that appeals to most men. That's part of it. It's how you act. It's how you behave. Seduction and seductiveness is not just a matter of good looks. It's a matter of the right attitude. And Cleopatra, as a young girl and as an adolescent, took as her mentors some of the greatest courtesans of the storied East. In other words, she learned the art of how to seduce a man and how to rule him through his sexuality from the best. So she turns all of her charms on Caesar, who's now in his 40s. But he's Caesar, and he's charismatic. And, he may be in his 40s, but he's in great shape. So Caesar falls a little in love with her. She falls a little in love with him, and they have this torrid romance. Caesar, though, is not going to be dominated by her feminine wiles. He'll listen to her. He'll think about what she says. He'll be a fool for her in little ways, but he's not going to share power with her, not beyond a certain point. Why? Because he knows what she's like, and he knows that if he gives her an inch, she'll take a mile. So what happens? Well, Caesar's men decide to get rid of Ptolemy, which makes sense. He's a twit. He killed Pompey, and this way Cleopatra can get Egypt, since Caesar and Cleopatra are an item. Caesar has a wife, of course, but she's back home, and Roman men do what Roman men do. So Cleopatra becomes queen. Now, in the course of this battle, parts of the great library at Alexandria burn to the ground. It's a great tragedy. But Caesar says, look, if it's war, and war you kill people. If some books get burned, it's a shame. Cleopatra says, you barbarian, you don't understand. This is the great library of Alexandria, center of the world's knowledge, and it's burning right now. And Caesar says, yeah, it's a shame. You don't understand! It's their first spat. First love argument, and it happens. Anyway, so Cleopatra becomes queen of Egypt, and Caesar spends some time there, has the romance, has some fun, and then goes home to Rome. Now, in Rome, there's no more Pompey, there's no more Crassus, there is only Caesar. And Caesar's crowd has been agitating. And so Caesar is pronounced dictator. And there are moves to make him dictator for life. Now, that's more power than any Roman has had, except Sulla and Marius. And the truth is, Caesar's still being coy about the whole king thing. When Caesar goes to the arena, the crowd proclaims him king, and he says, no! No kings in Rome! Well, then they proclaim him king a second time. He says, no, you're too kind. No kings in Rome. And they do it a third time, and he waits even a little longer before he says no. So the question is Caesar going to try to become king or not? And that's where we're going to leave it today. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, I intend to finish this lecture. The exam will either be on Friday, if I decide to give it remotely, or on Monday, if I don't. So be prepared for it on Friday or Monday. And it's on everything we've done since we started covering Rome. Whatsoever so humble, there's no place like Rome. Thank you for your attention. Have a happy, wondrous day.